Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. Today I have early access to a Chevrolet Bolt EUV. This is the SUV-like version of the Chevrolet Bolt, and we're going to go on a quick review and then we're going to take it for a drive. I have some thoughts about this car, can't wait to share them with you. You'll have to forgive the impromptu shooting today. I'm doing it handheld on my phone, but I only have about 1 hour to spend with the Bolt EUV, but I want to take you around for a quick tour. So let's get behind the camera. I'm going to go through some specs on this thing, and then of course we're going to get it out on the road and even try out Supercruise. I mentioned the Bolt EUV is the SUV-like version of the Chevrolet Bolt, and I say that with a little bit of sarcasm because that's what GM claims in their press materials, but I gotta tell you guys, it's only 0.2 inches taller and 0.2 inches wider. It actually has less cargo capacity and it has less rear headroom and width and shoulder room. I mean, it's just kind of crazy how they would make an SUV version that doesn't excel in every single spatial category. It gets 9 miles less range by the EPA than the Chevrolet Bolt EV. And so on paper, this makes no sense to me. The only metric where you gain measurable space is in the back seat, which is for rear legroom. So I'm going to switch to a wide angle view here. I have the front seat set for me in a 6'1" seating position, and we're going to try the back seat room. And yes, you can see great knee room and headroom. However, there's no sort of pocket on this side, but there is on this one, so that's kind of silly. But yeah, the knee room is totally fine. In terms of headroom, the 0.1 or 0.2 inches more you get in the regular Bolt would be nice because you can see I'm sitting totally normally here in the back seat and my head's hitting the roof. You can also see this crazy aggressive scalloping that they had to do just to make the back seats livable. Now I can sort of man spread and crouch down and relax, and that's totally fine. I have no real huge issues with the back seat room on this car other than it's not an SUV and there isn't a ton of room. Now let's talk about some of the good things here because I don't want to be totally down on this car. We'll put that back seat down and I'm just going to show you some of the room. Now in the regular Bolt EV, there's a trunk latch here, but in the Bolt EUV, you have to come down to this little hidden compartment. It took me a minute to find it here on the bottom. So with the back seats folded, you can see still quite a bit of room, plenty for like a camera bag here. There's a little partition that normally goes up, lays flat here so people can't see in through the rear window. And then you get relatively large underfloor storage. So I would say while it has slightly less cargo capacity than the regular Bolt EV, it does have more capacity for humans in terms of cubic feet. I think 3 more cubic feet for passenger space. That includes the front seat room. And it's really fine. You can really put whatever you want in here and no complaints there. I do have something funny to share about the brake lights. Let me kick on the parking lights and I can show you. And then we're going to get in through more of the specs, of course. Let's put it onto parking light mode. Here you can see the back lights are homogeneous, really nice LED looking units. Your brake light and turn signal are these. Those do nothing while you're driving. It looks so weird when you're following another EUV because the lights you would think react don't, and they're down there. It's really hilarious, actually. In terms of styling, you know, I'm not really a style guy. I don't buy cars because they look good. You know, I drive a Model 3. It's not particularly a great looking car, but I think in general, this looks okay. It's very GM. I don't know how to tell the difference between this and a regular Bolt. The way that I have found is the regular Bolt EV, not the EUV, has a black bar that goes from the headlight up to the A-pillar. Here, it's just this black little bar. That's totally fine. No worries. Down here, you have your lane departure guidance. This will push you back in if you are exiting a lane, basically, and that is separate from Supercruise. You have your traction control off. You can push it once to turn traction control off. You can see that indicated here in the screen, or if you want to do some big skids, you can push and hold, and then you'll see StabiliTrak will turn completely off here in just a second. There we go. That's that second indication saying everything is off and ready for some fun. Then you have the Sport mode, which may actually give you a little bit more power. I haven't really played around with it yet, but roughly it's about the same power. You have a nice little cubby for some change. I'm not sure what you would put in there, but something. Then you have push for park, pull reverse, push neutral, pull drive, and then push for park. I actually think this works quite well. The only thing that I don't like is that it takes up so much space. You can see here the center console of the vehicle is quite narrow, while it does have good storage. So you have a wireless phone charger here, really nice storage underneath this way, 2 cup holders, and then a really deep storage compartment in here, and no USB ports or anything in there. But yeah, pretty narrow. That's the only thing I have to say I don't like. You can see just putting my elbow on here uses almost all of the entire available space. So you're definitely going to be fighting with your passenger over width space in the Bolt EUV. Up front space is really nice. Great headroom. The side-to-side room for knees is okay. I would say if this piece didn't stick out as much, I could extend my leg a little bit further left. That might be nice, but not a deal breaker. This flat bottom steering wheel, it doesn't do anything for me. It's kind of like such a minor flat bottom that I wouldn't even call it that. Yeah, in terms of spaciousness for the driver alone, really good. I think you have that same screen from the previous Bolt. This new screen, we'll go into it here in just a second. I'll show you some of the energy stuff. But overall, really not a bad sizing for vehicle. I think the only thing you're lacking is that width room for your passenger. You know, you're both going to be fighting over the center console, but pretty good sizing inside, and the sunroof really makes this car feel much more open and airy. Digging into this 10-point-something-inch screen here, you have quite a few options to choose from. Apps, you can adjust your climate from here, or also using these hard buttons down here. And then there's also some EV stuff that I want to show you. So this is really neat. You can change your charge limit now all the way from 50%. It looks like maybe that's even 40%. I guess 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so from 40% up to 100%. That's pretty neat. And I really like that functionality a lot. Because if you're going away on vacation, you just plug it in, leave it down there. And that's the best thing for your car. On the energy side, we can see battery flow. So you can see we're about, I don't know, 60% charged or so. We can see some of our driving history and what's using the energy. Our lifetime miles per kilowatt hour is 3.1, right on par actually with the previous Bolt, I'd say. You can see my technique is really bad, and that's just because I was driving it a little bit aggressively. And here's our history. We actually got close to 4 miles per kilowatt hour a couple times during our drive today. I reset all this before we left. We need to talk about charging. So of course this is an electric car, and it has an EPA range rating of 250 miles, 9 less than the regular Bolt. That's totally fine. I think we'll probably see something closer to 220, 225 on highway. In real world, I was averaging 3.1 miles per kilowatt hour on the highway, just about the same as I've averaged in the Bolt in the past. And then, of course, they have updated their AC charging to support 48 amp, 240 volt charging, which is 11 kilowatts. 11 kilowatts is quite a bit for AC home charging. I don't see why they did that. There was no need, but I'm not complaining. I'm happy that there's faster AC charging. What I'm mad about, actually sort of really upset about, is the DC fast charging. Let me explain. This is a CCS connection. It has the J1772 port on the top and the 2 DC pins that do all the fast charging work here on the bottom. And this is the Achilles heel for the Chevrolet Bolt EUV. Only 55 kilowatt peak DC fast charging. Now for a vehicle that's launching here for a 2022 model year, is that sort of acceptable? I don't think so. They went through all the trouble to put new sheet metal on this car, redesign it. They should have spent whatever they needed to spend to make the DC charging faster. Volkswagen ID4, for example, can do 125 kilowatts, and we're going to take this out on the highway. It's actually really comfortable to spend a lot of time in, and it would be a great road tripper except for this DC charging power. Under the hood, the power electronics are largely unchanged from the regular Bolt EV. There's no all-wheel drive option here in the EUV. Has the same, again, battery pack and motor and inverter, and all the stuff is the same, and it looks pretty much the same under here. Up front here, I'm just going to walk you through the controls. All your windows, mirrors, headlights, all that stuff on the side over here is totally normal. You have your regen paddle here, which is great. As you're coasting down, you can pull this paddle even if you're driving in one pedal mode, and it will increase regen. Really love that. On the back side of the steering wheel, you have 2 buttons. These do your track forward and back. The 2 on this side are volume up and down. You have your automatic high beams, turn signals. All of this is very normal to the existing Bolt. And then we get to this side, which which controls this main screen here. Tons of different menus and options, nothing dissimilar from normal Bolt though. And then you have on this screen your instrument cluster. This will tell you if you drive efficiently how far you can go, if you drive inefficiently, and then your projected range is somewhere in the middle, of course. On the left side, I'll explain how these Supercruise buttons work on the highway here in just a moment, and I'd say let's get it out on the road. All right, guys, we're going for our first little drive in the Bolt. We have like 3 of us in Bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4 of us in Bolt EUVs. There are 2 Bolts on the other side. These quick press drives are always just really fast and you don't get too much time with them. But we're gonna try out Supercruise. So I pulled it into drive, immediately the doors locked. Everything feels kind of GM here. I don't even feel like I'm sitting that much higher than the Chevy Bolts that I had been tested many times now. So we can see the Bolts here on our left side and the Bolt EUVs in front of us. The way I've been able to tell the difference, because they almost look the same, which is crazy because they share 0 sheet metal on the outside, is the Bolt EUVs don't have a black bar that connects the headlights to the A-pillar, but the regular Bolt does. And normally I have no problem spotting cars, but definitely having a little bit of trouble here. First thing I'm noticing off the bat is I have it in 1-pedal driving mode, and it seems to be regenning all the way down to 0, which is great. Good turning radius here. Well, is it good turning radius? I'd say average turning radius. Feels about okay. I have my rear screen mirror up here, so what that is doing is instead of having the regular rear view mirror where you can see things through glass, there's a little camera on the back, and it's mounted higher than I remember, which is good because the higher vantage point makes it a little bit more realistic. Then of course I can raise and lower and zoom in and out. I'm just gonna have it zoomed all the way out. I think that's super helpful. So here we go. Make sure all my settings are correct. Drive, let's just try 1 pedal off. Yeah, almost no regen at like 8 miles per hour. No more B mode in this particular car. They put this new shifter in, there's no B. So you go to drive and then just select 1 pedal driving, and it seems to do a pretty good job of regenning down to a stop. I didn't really feel too much brake blending there at the bottom. So here we go, wide open throttle. Front wheel drive only in the Bolt EUV. Oh no, please stop talking. How do I turn you off? Let's see, this, settings, oh my god, navigation voice control, none. There we go. Don't need any of that. No heads-up display either. The only sort of heads-up display interaction that you get in Bolt EUV is this little red light that flashes. I thought I just turned her off. Oh wait, maybe I can just click. It's simpler than I thought. Navigation voice muted. So we're in a little convoy of Bolt EUVs. I'm in the back, which is perfect, which means I get to have more fun. I'm not following route directions. I usually get lost on these things and then just go and do my own thing anyway, which is fine. So power. Yep, we can burn the tire off. Does it feel fast? 163 kilowatt output. You see, the car's rated for 150 is what it says on the website. And I remember this from the previous generation Bolt, where it would always output a little bit more. So we're getting more than 200 horsepower output with a 163 kilowatt. Is that what it was showing? Yeah, 157 there. I mean, it feels quick. You don't need any more power than this, especially for those quick, low-speed, foot-down applications. It feels pretty good. Again, the front-wheel drive nature of these cars, I think, makes them a non-performance starter, but that's okay. They're meant to be just regular cruisers. So let's talk about seat comfort, because this is a question that I've received now many times, and GM claims that they made the seats look more futuristic with these patterns that are in there. I have my air conditioned seat on, which is nice. I believe only available in Bolt EUV, not Bolt EV. And so, are the seats more comfortable? I can't feel a difference, honestly. They feel just as, I guess, flat as the previous gen. See, I never had the problems that everyone else had previously. Wait a second, I'm following the Bolt EUV in front of me. Are those the taillights in the bumper? I hope you can see that. Yeah, that's terrible. And the turn signal. Wait, so what do you use the top lights for? Hold on a second. That doesn't make any sense. So basically they put these new rear, diffused rear lighting, homogeneous rear lights on this car, and they don't operate. They use the lower ones for braking and turn signals. Wow, that is hilarious. I'm trying to think of another car that does that, and the only thing I can come up with is the Mini Clubman, where it doesn't use the big red lights that you would think it uses, the ones in the bumper. That's pretty interesting. So I never had the problems that others have faced with the Bolt seats. You know, I definitely don't think they're great, but I think they're more than adequate, and I think they're fine here. I'm sitting on a seat. Does it have any sort of support? Absolutely not. They feel very narrow, where even if I close my legs all the way together, I mean, I guess I'm kind of big, but like, I just feel like I don't fit on them that well, and I don't have much room to sprawl out. I definitely would be arguing and fighting with my passenger for center armrest space, which has to be the most narrow center console I've ever noticed in any car other than, again, a Mini Cooper. So that, I would say, is not so great. But let's just say you're cruising in this thing. Yeah, you could get used to it. I guess I do feel like I'm sitting slightly higher than the regular Bolt. However, the whole car, Bolt EUV, is only 0.2 inches taller and 0.2 inches wider. It is 6 inches longer than regular Bolt, but only 3 inches of that goes to rear legroom, and you really don't notice it. I don't, at least. I do notice the headroom in both the Bolt and the Bolt EUV is sort of lacking when I try to sit up all the way. Even the Taycan Cross Turismo had more room, and not that I'm making the comparison to Taycan Cross Turismo, it's just that that car is way more sporty and low to the ground. So I'm driving in D mode with regenerative braking, one pedal driving on. They tell me that if I lift off the accelerator pedal and then pull the regen paddle, yes, it increases braking even further, so that is great. So I really love this one regen paddle strategy that GM has gone with. You can keep it in regular drive with one pedal driving off, which is interesting because it also changes your throttle mapping with one pedal driving off, it feels like, and this pulling the paddle just increases regen all the way. That's awesome. I would just drive it in one pedal all the time and pull the regen paddle when you want to. But I think first impressions of just getting it out on the road for my first time, steering is unbelievably light. There is a sport mode that seems to firm it up a little bit. Suspension feels top heavy and not very sporty, but this is not a sporty car. And yeah, is it bad? No, I think it drives nice. Bolts have always been very comfortable. I never thought they rode poorly, and road noise isn't nearly as quiet as ID4, I can tell you that right off the bat. So let me spend some more time with it. We'll jump on with Supercruise, try out this system here, and then we will we'll talk a little bit more about the Bolt EUV. Let's talk active safety. This Bolt is the only Bolt, so the EUV with the top premium premier package is the only Bolt that gets Supercruise, and Supercruise also you know, does steering and distance, but I want to see if adaptive cruise control works on the main road. So I've turned cruise control on and we've selected regular adaptive cruise control, but I am steering and it's working just fine. I can adjust my gap to the closest, and so now it's adaptive cruise controlling. However, Supercruise only works on approved highways, which are basically controlled access, where you have a barrier between opposite directions of traffic, and then once it's on Supercruise, you can take your hands off the wheel, actually. But before we get into that, we need to talk about how it tracks your consciousness. Are you paying attention or not? And so there's a little eye tracking, but it also does a little bit more. It does a little bit of like facial recognition and more than just looking at your eyes. Right here in front of me, a little sensor. And so I have taken off my mask. Obviously, apparently it doesn't work very well with masks, and we are going to try it out on the highway now, merging up, and I'm going to have the car merge up on adaptive cruise control. So I'm setting the adaptive cruise to 80 miles an hour. Here we go. And man, those turn signals in the bumper really get me. That is pretty hilarious, actually. So yeah, some Hellcats right up there, getting delivered from the factory. Always see cool stuff here in Michigan. So now I'm going to turn on Supercruise, and I've selected the button and everything's green, which means it's driving. And I'm here to monitor the situation. This is a level 2 driver assistance, not driver replacement, of course. So everything that you're experiencing with me here, I'm still responsible for the vehicle. Nice thing about Supercruise, it seems to get on the accelerator pedal pretty hard, and it really closes those gaps in traffic. In the Bolt EUV, Supercruise does not perform lane changes automatically. What it does is you have to hit the turn signal, it disengages the system. When you get back in the lane, it re-engages. I'm going to demonstrate up here just in front of this truck, but it's just centering in the lane, super smooth, really great. I don't have to touch the wheel, which is kind of nice actually, just for sitting here. So signal on, moving over, Supercruise goes blue, it says it's in standby, lane change over, and now it's back to green. Now, other versions of Supercruise in GM's new vehicle architectures will do lane changes, but apparently this architecture doesn't support it. So I don't really know why or what or how that's possible, but I will say it works great. The lane change thing doesn't bother me. So it has Supercruise. We need to talk about the Bolt EUV's long distance ability. And is this really a long distance road tripper? Well, it's got quite a bit of range, 250 miles EPA. The Bolt regular non-EUV has 259 miles of range. And I've tested that car in our 70 mile per hour test to do about 237, 238, something like this. So it gets most of its range even on the highway. So I expect this to do 225, 220 at 70 miles an hour, which is awesome. You know, but there's one Achilles heel with this car that for me makes it a non-starter for a highway trip, and that is its DC fast charging. So this car will only DC fast charge at 55 kilowatts, which is just not good, guys. What? You refresh the entire styling of the vehicle, spend all that money on a redesign, and then you don't update your hardware so that it can charge faster. To me, makes no sense at all. 55 kilowatts is just unacceptably slow. We're at the age of 100, 125 kilowatts for DC fast charging. But GM did upgrade the onboard charger to 11 kilowatts, which is 48 amps, and that's good, but not really going to make a difference for anyone. I think, at least. I think most people charge at home overnight, and that's plenty of charging power for an overnight charge. Yeah, this whole 55 kilowatt peak charging thing is just a little bit ludicrous to me. So, yeah, I would say a road trip is not going to be super pleasant in a Bolt, because yes, while it can charge and it can DC fast charge, it is going to take a really long time. We're talking an hour and a half at least for a 0 to 100% DC fast charge. Maybe they've altered the curve a little bit. They did it back in 2019 to make it better, but look, this is an around town car. You can fast charge it if you absolutely need to, but you're not driving this thing cross country and having a good time, that's for sure. You know, if you're doing those cross country trips, you want those 10-12 minute charging stops in and out, Taycan style, 270 kilowatts, or maybe something closer to this price range like ID4 at 125 kilowatts. That would make sense. And yeah, all right, let's test the on-highway acceleration. So I've turned off Supercruise, I'm putting on sport mode, and wide open throttle. Here we go, 75, 82. So feels good, feels just like the regular Bolt. I never complained about the power in that car, and yep, no need to at all. This is a fantastically well-powered vehicle, I would say. All right, testing the handling around the corner. We have some lean in here, and I can definitely feel on the limit of understeer for sure. There is no rotation wanting to happen. However, if I lift off and get the weight up front, yeah, it's not meant to be a performance handler, folks. This is I'm not going to call it an SUV. It's an SUV-like is what GM refers to it as. It's not. It's just a hatchback. It is very smooth, though, have to say. And I would say, while it's not as quiet as ID4 and Model Y, it's probably not as quiet as either. It rides nicer than Model Y for sure, and it rides nicer than maybe not ID4. Maybe I haven't driven the ID4 in a couple months, and I only had it for a little while, but definitely really good suspension calibration. So going for a quick pass here, and off we go. Let's talk one pedal driving characteristics at low speed. So I'm inching forwards right now nicely. I'm gonna lift off, huge regen, and then it's almost like it holds me on regen. I don't think the physical brakes are active, but judging by everyone else, I'm fairly certain my brake lights are on. Let's try that again. Bring speed up, lift off, it's strong regen down to 0. It might do a little bit of brake blending there at the end, but gotta say, that's impressive. That is the smoothest one pedal driving to 0 I've ever felt. Way smoother than Mustang Mach-E, smoother than the Tesla. And the Tesla Model 3, for example, and Model S with the permanent magnet motor that are capable of one pedal driving, blend the brakes at the end, but you always hear the brake pedal kick down. And so there's always an audible noise when it blends to friction braking right at the end. Here I felt nothing. It just came right down to 0 and held itself. It didn't wobble backwards or forwards. That was pretty impressive. I have to say, their one pedal driving calibration has to be one of the best I've ever experienced. Sorry for the little noise there. We're just on walkie-talkies. So yeah, big pro here. After spending some time with the Bolt now, I've driven it probably 50, 55 miles. Great, comfortable car. You know, I think where this car really shines is its price point. This thing is $33,945, $995, basically 34 grand for a base one. A maxed out one, let's say you're getting 42, 43. And so that's really the sweet spot. You get yourself an entry-level Bolt EV, especially, or EUV. There's a couple $1,000 difference there, and that's a lot of car for the money. You get 250 miles of range, really good acceleration, ample cargo room, styling subjective, great features, heated and cooled seats, sunroof's nice if you spec it. It's a lot of car for the money, and that's this car's value proposition. If you want to have an American-made, relatively affordable, long-range EV, this is a good option. And if you take trips occasionally, then maybe the slower DC fast charging rate doesn't affect you at all. Maybe if you only use it a couple times a year, no problem. If you're constantly going on big, long trips, though, that is going to hold you up. But I imagine most people thinking about buying a Bolt will be the commuting to work, around town, and occasionally go on a longer trip that would require a DC fast charge. And yeah, it's super comfortable, great on the highway. Supercruise is awesome. If I were to get one of these, I would 100% spec one with Supercruise. It's just so nice to sit here, look forwards, monitor the situation, but not have to touch the wheel. That is special for sure. So yeah, overall, I think it's a great value for the money. I think it drives quite nicely, very comfortably. It's not a performance car, it's a comfortable cruiser. It's really good. Couple wishes. I wish it had DC fast charging that was faster. I wish the seats were much better than this. These seats are arguably, I think, the worst seats I've ever sat in a new vehicle. And other than those two things, though, you know, for me, I'm not really into the styling, but I don't think many cars look good. You know, you don't go to me for styling advice. They're car designers that'll explain what looks good and what doesn't. I really don't know. But yeah, just a nice, comfortable, easy car to live with every day. I could totally see why someone would buy one of these. And I think if you just don't like a base Model 3, or you want this sort of seating position, you definitely sit higher than a Model 3. This might be the way to go. I think I would get the EUV over the EV though. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. For a size comparison, I found a Model 3 in the parking lot to park it next to, so you can get a gauge as to the size. You can definitely tell it's taller, and I've parked the rear of the vehicles about at the same distance, and we can see up front, let's just take a look. You can see they're about the same. Looks like the Model 3 is a little bit longer than the Bolt EUV, but most of that is used up on the front hood. I think the sizing is a really nice size, definitely good height out of the Bolt EUV, and it seems to be quite compact in terms of a hood and use most of its space for the cargo. Definitely no complaints on the sizing of this vehicle at all. And yeah, really good rear seat legroom. Have to say that is a standout feature. And that glass roof really makes this car much more pleasant than the older Bolts.